Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the AAS YouTube channel. And this one is going down the Scientific Editor series. So you get to meet all of our scientific editors for the journals. And I'm very happy to have Luigi Stella with us today. Hey, Luigi.
Hello.
What's your geolocation? Where are you at?
I'm at home.
You're home. Where's home?
Home is in very close to the center of Rome, in fact, right in front of the San Giovanni Square.
Okay.
So,
very cool. Very cool.
We are doing some work on the roads, and so it could be quite noisy at some times.
Well, okay. We'll live with that, I'm sure. So let's see. We're coming up. Are you getting any hints of spring yet in Rome?
Not really. No, in fact, yesterday and the day before were, I think, the coldest in the winter so far. Not especially cold because it rarely gets to freezing here.
Okay. Okay. That is a pretty awesome bookshelf over your shoulder. Is that all astronomy books?
Not really. No. I don't keep my astronomy book here. No, they are mainly books about photography, some classical music, I see, about mountaineering, more or less this sort of stuff. Yeah.
For those who are wondering, when we gather in person and even online as scientific editors, we have an annual meeting once a year. Speaking of those books on photography, it has fallen to Luigi to be our official photographer. And so he will come out with an actual camera and snap us all. It's all pretty good. So now I know where you learned it from.
Though recently we had to take pictures from the screens because of our meetings.
Yeah.
Not because.
Yeah. But you even put that one together still.
Well, that was easy.
Cool. Luigi, what do you like to do for research? Generally, broadly.
Well, I work in high energy astrophysics.
Okay.
I especially deal with neutron stars and black holes, problems related to accretion, and I have a particular fascination with the strong field gravity. It's been like that for a long time,
but both stellar and galactic, or
mainly galactic, a little bit of AGN too, but more in the past than now.
Okay, very cool.
And also a bit with gravitational waves, I forgot, which perhaps could be included in the strong field I mentioned before.
Absolutely. So I'm always kind of curious how people get into the fields they do, right? Because there's so many things that topics one could get into. So I'm curious how you got into the fields that you're in.
Well, I began studying physics in general. At a certain point, I had to decide which branch of physics I was going to try to do, because at the time there were very, very few jobs in Italy in physics in general, and in particular in the research world, I should say, in the academy.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I just decided to try and do astrophysics, since that's what I liked for the longest time. And so I thought to myself, I might just do what I like doing, what I would like to study. And at that point, I had read, actually, even when I was in high school, I read quite a bit about these subjects. And I remember in those years, which were the early Cygnus X1 years, the early accretion disk years. I remember reading some nice paper by Kip Thorne or Alan Lightman on Scientific American. So I had the fascination already for the subject.
Very good.
At a certain point, I realized that at the University of Rome, there was a young professor, Remo Ruffini, who had come back a few years earlier from Princeton. He had contributed quite a bit to the development of black hole theory and the astrophysics of black hole, and so decided to do the thesis under his guidance. And then that was very instrumental for the beginning of my career, I must say, because I was introduced to Riccardo Giacconi, and finally when I got a fellowship as a postdoc of the European Space Agency, I managed to go and work at CFA for about 2 years.
Very cool. Very cool. Did not know that. Very nice.
But that was a long time ago because I'm pretty old by now.
Oh, spring chickens. So that was in the past. So what do you see going forward? Let's say over the next couple of years, what do you think are some of the big things in the field, in your field over the next couple of years?
Well, the thing that is really happening these days, the coming together of different approaches concerning compact objects and black holes in particular. I mean, besides the multi-wavelength approach involving photons, of course, we have gravitational waves. So we have cosmic rays of different kinds, including neutrinos, of course. So, I mean, we are learning at quite dramatic pace these days about these objects and the way they, well, also the impact they might have in the universe, because of course there is a lot of interest these days on what the cosmological role of black holes could be. I personally think that also a big subject is going to be, it's already, but it's going to be even more the one of fast radio bursts.
Yes. Yeah. I think there's still more theories than perhaps photons. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But I think just answering the repeating question alone will be a big hint. So yeah. So we'll go nonlinear. So let's go back. What was your very first APJ paper?
Well, in fact, I went back some days ago and looked at it. It was, I mean, it was a paper I wrote with Bob Rosner on magnetic instabilities in accretion disks. And that was indeed from my CFA years. And I was surprised to see that it still contributes to my H index, because it was quite, of course, it's very old, but nevertheless, it has received a number of citations.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I know Bob. I've worked a little bit with Bob.
Oh, you did? Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, I was at Chicago and Bob was at Chicago. And initially, Bob was the leader of what became the Flash Institute, or so it was the genesis of the Flash multidimensional hydrodynamics code, and Bob was sort of heading up that effort in the early years. And I had met Bob before at various places, so I like Bob. He's great.
Yes, great guy.
That's a shout out, Bob. If you're listening, that's a shout out, Bob. So what's
a person of great inspiration for me too, I must say. Also, we wrote years later, when I already returned to Europe, we wrote another paper together, which was I really enjoyed working with him.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. So what's been your history as an author in those intervening years? I imagine you've published more than one paper in the APJ.
Okay. I think I've published about 70 something or something like that. Right? Maybe. Well, I don't know, but here in Europe it's sometimes difficult because of the pay charges. So we usually publish more in astronomy and astrophysics or monthly notices.
Yep.
Or nature, but nature is more the exception than the rule.
Right. But at some point along that trajectory of 70 pages or 70 papers or so, articles or so, you became a scientific editor. And I'm curious why people decide to become scientific editors. So what was your motivation?
Well, there was a point in which I had established the high energy astrophysics group at the institute I work at. And so I felt that I had, very young people, very active. And that I felt that they were ready perhaps to do more without me, in a sense. So as if they needed to be more freer, in a sense. So I decided to do something else, that I should do something different from what I'd done in the past. And I was encouraged to apply by one of the editors at the time, and also the editor-in-chief at the time still, whom I had met in a visiting committee insisted that I applied, and so in the end I applied. Of course, I liked the idea of reading a lot more than I would have done otherwise on subjects that are close to mine, but not really mine, including, of course, the ones that I work on nevertheless. And also the prestige of it was one motivation for sure. So
Okay.
in the end, it worked out well. I'm really happy.
Still working out well.
Thanks.
So when was this? When did you become a scientific editor? What year?
I think I think 2003 or something like that.
Ooh, okay.
I began in 2003. Yes, so it has been a long time.
Yeah. Wow. That's a 17-year tenure. That's awesome.
Yes.
Wow. So that was with that would have been with Helmut?
No. It was Rob Kennigan.
Oh, Rob. Yeah. Okay. So not that far back. Okay. So Rob. Very cool. Very cool. So, for those who may not know, what exactly does a scientific editor do?
Okay. Well, what do we do? We are in between the authors and the referees and the publisher. So we are in a mediating position, a mediating service position, I would say. And of course, the first thing to do is read the paper carefully, and then based on the previous knowledge that we might have of a field or a certain area of research, decide who could be a good referee for it. And of course, at least in my experience, I often have to go and look in the ADS, what people have done in the past, who they collaborated with in the past. So after a while, you get to know a little bit the geography of the different groups and collaboration, and that's very helpful also in determining who would be a good referee for a certain paper. Yep. So that is, I think that, the fate of the peer review is largely determined by the choice of the referee, I should say. But well, perhaps the fate is not the right word, but the way in which the peer review is going to progress is largely determined by the choice of the referee, I think.
Yes. Okay. So roughly on any given week, how many new submissions do you handle?
I think I average about 4.
4 a week. So that probably means in steady state, there's somewhere around 60, 70 in some state, right?
Yes. Yeah, right. Yes. But it's quite rare. I mean, I usually get 5, 4, 3. I think on average is about 4.
Okay.
And I like them the way they, come to me in time during the week, because I don't like to have a bunch of 4 or 5 paper in one day.
So for those who may not know, there was
it's fine the way it is. I'm not criticizing.
No argument for me. So, but there was a time. So what Luigi's referring to, there was a time when all new manuscripts were distributed on a Monday.
Right.
You got no other manuscripts through the week, and so you got whatever your allocation or your the ones to do in your queue on Monday, and so you had all week. And so the general idea is you would try and find a referee within a week before the next batch came in. But it was somewhere, I don't know, 7, 8. It's about 7 years ago or so. Maybe longer, I forget exactly. But we moved to a little bit more continuous distribution of manuscripts. So they will come in on a Monday, a Tuesday, and so they're a little bit more spread out through the week, which I like better as well. I like more a continuous flow than a big dump on a particular day. It just works better for me. So of those manuscripts that come in continuously throughout the week, what do you think makes for a good, solid initial submission manuscript?
Well, to me, the most important thing is that in a manuscript, goal and the results are stated very clearly since the very, very beginning. I mean, since the abstract.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the preparation of the paper and the way it is the work is described is absolutely crucial for having a good manuscript. And but I must say that I mean, most of our papers are very good papers. I mean, the very fact that we have a pretty high acceptance rate is tells. I mean, it's tells immediately that we are dealing with a very strong community that submits, on average, very good papers. More than average, I would say. Most of them are very good papers.
Cool. So an author submits a paper.
Yes.
Let's talk about the kind of the referee process from both sides, from author and referee. So let's take it from the author side first. So do you have any tips or guidance for authors during the peer review process?
Well, I think the culture in astronomy is that referees tend to help authors. I mean, I've dealt a little bit with physics journal as an author, not as an editor. And also talking to my colleagues, I mean, in the physics world, it's much more common to have an yes or no type of attitude. I mean, it's very rare that a referee report comes back without any suggestion. And so it's very rare to get a referee report that says abruptly, this paper should be immediately rejected, or this paper should be immediately accepted. Very, very rare. And so the culture is one in which the referees really helps the authors in, again, the vast majority of the cases. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I would advise the authors, even when they get a relatively negative report or even a negative report, I mean, just to think of the referee as somebody who has read their papers, and in most cases, they are really there to help the authors improve it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's an attitude that I would strongly recommend that most authors have it nevertheless, but in some cases could be a little more tricky.
Yes. Yeah, it's largely a constructive process for authors. Yes. And so, yeah, I agree with you. When that first report comes in, take a breath, relax. Because I'm trying to remember that it is largely a constructive process, and as practiced by the community, and so hence the roughly 85% acceptance rate of the AAS journals. So yeah. How about on the other side? Let's take it from the referee side. Do you have any tips for referees on writing a report? What makes a good report for a referee? Well.
Again, most referees, and by the vast majority of the referees, are very competent. They send very good reports, and I mean, very thoroughly prepared reports. Mm-hmm. One advice, especially for the younger ones, is not to write excessively long reports, and especially reports in which, I mean, there isn't, I mean, in the report, it should always be specified which are really the important points and which are the less important points. That doesn't always occur, but again, we are talking about exceptions rather than the standard case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, everybody starts off writing their first report at some time. So,
oh yes.
No, it's good advice. It's good advice. Yeah. We've certainly gotten, you have as well, I'm sure, you get those reports that are as long as the manuscript or longer than the manuscript reviewing. It's like, whoa, I appreciate the detail. I really do.
And sometimes they have also to remind authors that, I mean, things ought to be explained in the manuscript and perhaps also in the report, in the answer to, in the reply to the report. But of course, the key thing is the manuscript. So I mean, things ought to be clarified or made better in there, not just in the reply.
Mm-hmm. Yes, if you put it in the reply, it should probably be in the manuscript. in bold or some colored font. Blue is a popular choice.
Yes.
People like blue. So yeah, should definitely go in there. Cool. Luigi, do you have any other final thoughts you'd like to share with about the peer review process in general?
Well, at this time, I'm really happy with the way it runs and it's handled. I think it runs pretty smoothly. Occasionally, of course, there are problems, but I mean, the spirit of collaboration between editors and it's always very positive. And we get great support from the staff.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't.
Janice and Alex.
Janice and Alex, they are just great, outstanding, really. I mean, they answer every question, basically.
Yeah, they're
address any problem. They are incredibly fast and effective. So
for those who don't know, Janice and Alex are run the managing office, and
that's right.
They are the first ones who will be touching your manuscript when it comes in. And so they run it through a couple of initial quality control checks. And they basically have their fingers in the manuscript all throughout the process. And whenever questions do arise, and they do arise, Janice and Alex are, they're just great. They can fix anything in the system. That's just great. Fantastic. And then we also have some value add services. So we got Gus and Greg. We got Eric, who do stuff on the data side and software side. And then Eric on the statistics side of the house. And so those are also often quite useful during the review process, I find.
Absolutely, I agree completely.
But there's also a whole support structure, like, if there's an issue, and issues do come up on manuscripts, I agree with you that it's a very collegial group that we have, and so you can float problems around and see if anybody else has handled a similar type of issue, or how to deal with particular situations. And so there's a great deal of sharing and open knowledge on how to cover stuff, and that's a very nice. It's a nice feeling. You have colleagues who will help, especially someone who's done it for 17 years. So.
Oh yes.
Luigi is really awesome. He's great.
Oh, thank you.
You're so welcome. Well, I think that will do for this scientific editor session. So Luigi, I want to thank you so much for spending some time today talking about your research and talking about the editorial process of the AAS Journals.
My pleasure.
All righty. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.